The idea is to create a situation where the people are so frightened of the violence all around them that they will throw their hands up in the air and demand, "Federal government, do something." And the only choice open will be martial law.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. We mustn't kid ourselves into thinking that the communists have placed their agitators only into the black communities. They're working both sides of the street. They want hatred, violence, and bloodshed between the races, and they don't care how they get it or whom they use, even children if necessary.
And they shall pass through it, hardly bested and hungry. And it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves and curse their king and their God, and look upward. And they shall look unto the earth, and behold, trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and they shall be driven to darkness. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 21 and 22. Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to our venerable apostles and others of great millstone who rule well. Peace and blessings to the Lord's elect, the house of David. It's a brother Haran coming back at you with another lesson, low and be edifying and uplifting unto the elect. All right, and I'm going to jump right into this. This is titled, "Both Sides Gear Up for War as an Internal Revolution Begins to Erupt in the United States." Okay? And internal, right? Within. Okay? Within. And of course, that reminds me, all right, to bring out this right here. All right, the book of Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 2, it says, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city and kingdom against kingdom." All right, and when you go into that word, okay, this is all, again, biblical prophecy. When you go into that word, set, all right, I believe it says here, let me see here. Let me see if it's going to show me the word. All right, let's do it here. Isaiah 19 and verse 2. All right. So you go to that word set. It says to entwine as a screen, by implication to fence in, right? To cover over, all right? To join together, to set, all right? But another word that is synonymous with set is also what? To stare. Okay, when you set something up or you stare something up, in this case, the Lord is doing that. He's stirring up the spirits, okay, of the Egyptians, meaning the citizens of America, Babylon the Great, all right, because of all the things that's going on. These ICE agents going into different states, okay, they started it back in last summer. Okay, you had this whole thing with LA and so on and so forth. It kind of died down a little bit, all right, and then now it's resurrected again. And now they're taking their attention out to Minneapolis. So we're going to be watching to see. Okay, but it looks like it's the orchestrated chaos or controlled chaos has begun. All right, because now all of a sudden you're hearing all kinds of different protests. I'm like, wait, what? Right, there was a clip that I saw, all right, of Megyn Kelly. I believe, yeah, Megyn Kelly, I think. Was it Megyn? No, it wasn't Megyn Kelly. It was, damn, what's this lady? Shit. The lady that told the NBA players to shut up and dribble. I think she's a Fox News anchor. All right. Damn, I forgot her name. It'll come back to me. But yeah, she was out there and she was asking one of these protesters, like, yo, do you even have a job? And the protester said, I'm getting paid right now. I said, okay. Right. So, you know, it's like you could tell that this thing is not organic. It's like, okay, one thing that leads to another, and it's just inciting, all right, violence. It's inciting a reaction that they're looking for. All right. I believe Trump also declared a national emergency. All right. In regards to this whole money, is a $2.5 billion that he's trying to hold on to. You see what I'm saying? From the Venezuela oil deal thing that he's doing over there, which is really not a deal, right? But more of a steal. Okay, so you got that going on. So it's like, okay, national emergency has been declared. All right, let's see what happens then. All right, is this another strategy they're using to bring in something else? That's something else, meaning martial law, right? So let's read this article and see, all right, if that could potentially be the case. All right, which it will. All right, but it says the left wants to get millions of activists into the streets during the months ahead. And just like last time around, they are hoping that an incident in Minnesota will be the spark, right? Just like in 2020 with the whole George Floyd situation. Okay, because meanwhile, ICE has initiated a wartime recruitment, quote unquote. Okay, wartime recruitment, wartime. All right, this is getting serious, and we said this was going to happen. Again, we always bring up Rex 84. Okay, Rex 84 is what is it's playing out in front of your very eyes, man. It's a soft version of it, but it's already kicked off. Once they start going house to house, door to door, all right, it's not just about so-called illegal immigrants, because that was just the step in the door, the foot in the door, so to speak. Okay, the pretense. And now that they got their foot in the door, meaning they got these ICE agents in your cities and your streets and already operating, all right, it's over with. Now they're just going to expand. That's all it is. Okay. So a wartime recruitment strategy, and is planning to meet any protests head on. Both sides absolutely hate one another. You hear that? And we have already seen so many incidents of violence. This is such a tragedy because none of us should want to see Americans fighting against Americans. That's Egyptian against Egyptians. Okay? One people stand up to fight against another with swords in their hands. All right, it says, unfortunately, I am convinced that the civil unrest that we are witnessing will greatly escalate as 2026 rolls along, because it's biblical prophecy. Isaiah 19:2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. All right? That's violence being stirred up on all fronts, all throughout the states, the cities, the towns. All right? Because everyone is going to be going through the same thing. The news media is going to be populating the same thing. It's all agitation propaganda. That's how that works. But again, it's also fulfilling biblical prophecy. Okay? It says, during an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel's show, Rachel Maddow revealed that the left's plan is basically to flood the city and the streets with protesters. All right, it says, Rachel Maddow calls for more protests against President Trump, right? And what's that going to do? That's going to cause him to call in the Insurrections Act, all right, and then render your cities and states under martial law. Okay, because you've been hearing martial law even in the mainstream, bro. Mainstream media is already saying martial law, right? You have Senator, I believe it was Rand Paul who said it or something like that, like a week or so ago, right? He said something about martial law. You see? So all these things that's happening is going to lead to martial law. All right. It says, quote, this is Rachel Maddow's quote. It says, once you have 3.5% of a population protesting non-violently against a dictator or an authoritarian, that is essentially an unstoppable force that they can't oppose, end quote. So that sounds like sedition. Okay. It says, if you do the math, that would be more than 10 million people in the United States, and that's nothing. All right, they want you to do that because, and hey, listen, trust and believe this. If there's any protest, you know, you got Jake that always want to do dumb shit, especially you Israelites that always want to jump into shit when it's hot. You might not want to do that this time around. All right, because they got technology that's going to track you. They're going to find you and they're going to come blow you up. Straight up, man. All right, you're going to walk yourself into some shit you don't want to be a part of. All right. All this chaos that's going to be in the streets, if you wise, you're going to move from there and watch and observe from a distance. All right, because they got cameras. You got to do some research on Gotham technology. All right, it's some serious shit. This is why we always say, right, and that you camps, you other camps, you don't know what's going on. That's why you never really tout the name of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. We understand what's happening. That's why when we see this shit playing out, we're like, yeah, nah, look, Ain't no other way besides the Lord to get us out of this. All right. So y'all could keep playing and doing all this. Hey, it is what it is, man. All right. But yeah, going back to the point, you got Palantir technology. All right, the Gotham technology. Okay, and that shit is all there designed to track people. Okay, find you and do what they need to do with you. Okay, they've told you. Alice Carp and them have already told you what they're planning to do with it. All right, and you protesting against the president is looked at as you being an enemy. All right, a domestic T. Look what the Christy Norm is saying about people driving cars. I think this article is going to talk about it, but we'll see. Right, you're a domestic T, and you're using your car as a vehicle, your vehicle as a means to run over ICE agents and shit. Right, they send the stage. They send the stage, man. All right. It says they want to flood. The word flood is in this article. They want to flood the streets with far left activists, just like they did in 2020, and they fully understand that there will be widespread violence, just like we saw back then. And now the death of Renee Nicole has given them exactly what they needed. The mainstream media is portraying her as an innocent victim, but the truth is that she had been recruited as an anti-ICE warrior, and she was simply doing what she had been recruited to do. Whether this is true or not, the fact is, it sparked something that they could use, all right, as a crutch, all right, as a I should say crutch, right, or some type of propeller, to kick things off, all right, messing with people's emotions, right, coming up with all these fake protests. I mean, damn, you got Iran, they got protests going on, you know what I mean? It's like, okay. So it says here, somebody said she never should have been there. It says, and we all know that clashes between ICE and anti-ICE radicals would eventually produce this sort of incident. In the aftermath of Renee's death, protests immediately erupted nationwide. It says, while heated protests were happening in Minnesota, demonstrations also took place or were expected to Thursday in New York City, Seattle, Detroit, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Philadelphia, San Antonio, New Orleans, and Chicago. Right, so we can see, and these are all major states that's filled with a whole bunch of Jake. All right, Jake is heavily, densely populated, especially in the inner cities of all these states we just mentioned, all these cities. Right, it says protests were also scheduled in smaller cities later this week in Arizona, North Carolina, and New Hampshire. All right, so the whole thing is like, oh, there's protests with after ICE done deleted this Edomite woman, or what appears to be an Edomite woman, and this is what's going on. So you wait till they start hitting Jake. That's when it's going to really it's going to pick up. All right, scripture says, let me get that real quick. There's a book of Genesis chapter 49 verse 9 says, Judah is a lion's whelp, meaning a lion's cub, right? From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? All right, and the Lord is going to use certain events here in America to stir up the spirit of Jake. All right, it could be another Trayvon Martin situation. All right, another what's that other kid? Something Brown. All right, another situation like that. All right, and many different George Floyd, the most recent one that happened. Right, and many different situations. It's just going to be piling on. Right, one might spark something, and then they do it again, and then again. It just became like, oh, back and forth. Oh shit, But they just want to get Jake involved. That's the main target. All this shit that they're doing is to start something to bring Jake in. All right. Once Jake gets involved, it's game over. All right. Let's get that real quick. There's a book of Isaiah. Let me see here. There's a book of Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 17. It says, and the land of Judah shall be a terror unto Egypt. Okay. Everyone that maketh mention thereof shall be afraid in himself, because the counsel of the Lord Yahweh of hosts, which he hath determined against it. All right. So Judah's gonna be legit, like on some like legit a roaring lion. Okay. You're gonna have the so-called Black Panthers out of nowhere. That's gonna rise back up again. You know what I'm saying? Shit, we might see the NFAC without their grandmaster and shit. You might see them formulate some type of coalition again, right? You might see the Islam brothers all of a sudden band together to wake up now. Oh, da da da, right? Because again, the scripture says Egyptian against the Egyptian, right? All these groups, all these other camps, right? All these want to be affiliated with the world. They're going to be tied into worldly events, worldly affairs, and they're going to react accordingly. We're not tied into all that. We just observe from afar, and we prophesy to tell you what comes next. All right. So you're going to have even ISUPK in them, right? They always want to be marching and being around all these area at different places, being all hostile and shit. Hey, you're going to see them niggas out there too, getting involved. You know, getting involved, man. We gotta come together, brothers and sisters. We gotta protect our brothers, man. They're killing us, man. If we don't stand up, they're gonna kill us all, man. Hey, da da da. It says, needless to say, these protests were very well funded. There you go. In fact, we have learned that funding for the protests in New York City came from a very familiar source. Wouldn't it be some shit like George Soros and them, right? It says if the left thinks that they can get the Trump administration to back down, they are wrong. According to CBS News, approximately 2,000 federal agents have been deployed to Minneapolis for a 30-day surge. 30-day surge, huh? Interesting. It says the Trump administration has begun a massive deployment of hundreds of Department of Homeland Security, DHS, agents to the Twin Cities area as it escalates its federal crackdown amid a widening fraud scandal in Minnesota. Multiple law enforcement officials familiar with the plan told CBS News, right? So it's almost like these things happened out of nowhere. The whole Epstein thing is done. It's like quiet. Crazy. It says the crackdown could involve roughly 2,000 agents and officers from Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Deportation Branch and Homeland Security Investigations. The agency's investigative arm tasked with fighting transnational crimes, the officials said. They requested anonymity to discuss operations that have not been publicly announced. The plan is for the agents and officers to oversee a 30-day surge in operations in the Twin Cities area, making the region the first major target of the Trump administration's expanded immigration crackdown in the new year, officials said. Expanded immigration crackdown. Now it's expanded, not based on just area that they're covering / domain that they're covering, but who are they allowed to go after now? It's not just my so-called illegal immigrants. Now it's American citizens who may be in opposition to what is going on from the executive branch perspective. Okay? So again, and this is all being pushed by the Jays. It's mostly because people are waking up to what's going on, and everyone is mostly, for the most part, so-called anti-J, anti-Zion, anti-little hats, tiny tops. Okay? The conversations that's going on online, the videos that are being pushed, videos that are being watched, and so on and so forth, it's very threatening to them. Okay? And though no one is going to physically pick up any type of violent acts against those people per se, they perpetrate it that way. They make it seem like they're at risk, like somebody's going to do something to them, right? And then they come up with these FFs to play out these things to pull on people's heartstrings a little bit, push certain propaganda narratives a little bit more, like the, Australia situation, Bondi situation that happened about a month ago, right? And many more that's to come. It says, we heard the word surge being used a lot during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Using military terminology is only going to increase tensions. Okay? And when you go into that word surge, right? These devils, man. You go into that word surge, right? It says fountain, spring of water, a word of uncertain origin, probably from French sorge, stem, It says to rise, swell, from Latin, to rise, arise, get up, mount up, ascend, attack. Okay? It says up from below. All right? It says to lead, to rule. Right? High, rolling swell of water, large wave or billow. Okay? It says an excited rising up. Okay? Surge, an exciting rising up. Okay? It says to rise, to ride. It says spring up, arrive, rise in waves, rise and fall, on or as the waves. Okay? The surge, right? Right? The surge. It sounds very much like a siege. Okay? And that's all, again, let's get that real quick. We're getting closer to those days, man. Yeah, we're getting so close to those days. That's why they set everything up. All right, here's the book of Isaiah, chapter 59 and verse 19. It says, so shall they fear the name of the Lord Yahweh from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, right? A surge, right? A raging flood tide, a surge. The Spirit of the Lord Yahweh shall lift up a standard against him. So we are getting closer to that. This whole ICE thing, right? I could see this being the opening for things to escalate, for them to even bring in a higher level of military power, hence martial law. Okay? Going door to door is not going to be just ICE doing that, because ICE is just recruits from niggas that ain't got no jobs, right? Niggas sitting around here, because there was this one video that I saw where there was two Northern Kingdom Jakes that were stopped by ICE agents. And when you watch the video slowly, man, and you just listen to how they were talking to these guys in the car, you could tell that they're not real law enforcement people. Like, they don't know what's going on. They probably took a few classes, right? Maybe like 3-week or 4-week classes. You go sit down someplace in some room somewhere, in some building somewhere, make it seem all official and shit, right? You have to get this paper, have to make sure you have this, wear this, whatever. You have a criminal background? Perfect. You just came out of jail? Perfect. You was in the military shooting people and killing people? Perfect. Okay, bet. You got domestic violence problems? Perfect. You got anger issues? Perfect. You drink a lot? Perfect. All these people, they're bringing them in. All right? Sit your ass down. These are the videos. Watch the videos, right? We're going to be learning this. We're teaching you this. We have the technology for this. This is what we got for you, right? And then they train them with the perspective of the civilians being the enemy, okay? When you see this person come up to you this way, you have to teach them de-escalation. They say, you just assume that the person is going to hurt you, so you have to defend yourself by offending them, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like sick shit, right? There was a time where anyone who was in civic duty, you had to make sure that you are there to protect and serve, okay? Be of servitude to that society or that place that you're at. But now it's more like coming in there to bring in some form of force, and the people are going to band together and fight against that. That's what you're seeing going on right now. Okay? It's all agitation. They pushed it for people to react. Remember, the true action is in the reaction. Okay? So the surge, right, they're using these words very cleverly. It's not done by accident. All right? Because it's all going to fulfill biblical prophecy. They shall be like madmen sparing none. 2 Ezra 16 tells you that. Okay? It says the Washington Post is telling us that ICE has begun a $100 million wartime recruitment strategy. Wow. It says U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials are planning to spend $100 million over a 1-year period to recruit gun rights supporters and military enthusiasts through online influencers and a geo-targeted advertising campaign. Part of what the agency called a wartime recruitment strategy, it said, was critical to hiring thousands of new deportation officers nationwide, according to an internal document reviewed by the Washington Post. The spending would help President Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda dominate media networks and recruitment channels, including through ads targeting people who have attended UFC fights, listened to patriotic podcasts, or shown an interest in guns and tactical gear. According to a 30-page document distributed among officials this summer detailing ICE's surge hiring marketing strategy. Now, why is that? Because these are people that if you have against you, might be a problem. So those kind of people that have those kind of qualifications or experience, they say, these kind of people we can work with. You know what I'm saying? Let's bring them on board, recruit them, pay them some good money, right? And who's not going to take that kind of money, right? However much they're going to be given. You see? So it's a very clever tactic to divide people and to create this spirit of hostility, right? And that's what they're doing. It says the Department of Homeland Security has spoken publicly about its fast-tracked effort to significantly increase ISIS workforce by, that's crazy, you see? It sounds like ISIS, right? When you put ICE apostrophe S, it's ISIS, okay? The terrorist group ISIS? These devils, bro. Anyway, it significantly increases their workforce by hiring more than 10,000 new employees, a surge promoted on social media with calls for recruits willing to perform their sacred duty, quote unquote. That sounds like some brainwashing. We're about to put you into some type of cult, like, you know what I'm saying? Sacred duty, like what the fuck, right? And defend the homeland by repelling foreign invaders. It says the agency currently employs more than 20,000 people, according to ICE's website, ICE, right? It said if they're prepared for war, who do they intend to fight? I'm sure that many of you have seen these ads by now. There are a lot of unemployed people out there these days, and so I'm sure that they're getting a lot of applications. Exactly, right? Mad people, you put in applications. Some people do this application thing as a full-time job, just not getting paid for it, right? And you're not getting nothing back. People throwing in 500 applications, nothing. That's crazy. So an opportunity like this, they're going to take it. Okay? Vice President J.D. Vance says that ICE hires more people. As ICE hires more people, we will soon see members of ICE going door to door. Okay? That's the Hitler Gestapo right there. Okay? They stop you. If they're going door to door, then they're going to have checkpoints in the streets, in the highways. All right? There's going to be checkpoints very soon. Because you're not just going to go door to door and that's it. If you're going door to door, you definitely going to have checkpoints. All right? So, 2nd Ezra 16, all right, where a man, 15, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. We're going to be seeing that soon, man. All right? These are the days that builds to that. All right? It says here, man, door to door. That's good. That's Rex 84, man. Okay, going door to door. Let me. Go door to door to do what? Let's get this. What is Rex 84, right? Rex 84. All right. Let's see here. Right, so check this out. They're going door to door, right? All right, cool. It says Rex 84B, short for Readiness Exercise 84 Bravo, was a classified scenario and drill developed by the United States federal government to detain large numbers of United States residents. It doesn't necessarily say citizens. It says residents, meaning you live here, you reside here. Okay? Deemed to be national security threats. It doesn't say anything about illegals. It just says residents deemed to be national security threats. That is the goal. That is the end goal. Okay? In the event that the president declared a national emergency, the president has declared a national emergency. The scenario envisioned state defense forces rounding up state defense forces. DOJ is included in that. ICE is underneath the DHS and so on and so forth. Okay? So the scenario envisioned state defense forces, ISIS forces, rounding up to 500,000 undocumented Central American citizens. So they allowed all these millions of undocumented citizens to come in here during the Biden administration so that they can fulfill this part of their New World Order agenda during Trump's administration. Right? So they're designated, it says undocumented Central American residents and 4,000 American citizens, see? American citizens whom the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has designated as national security threats. You've heard her use those words already, right? As part of the secret continuity cocon of government program. See, these people would be detained at 22 military bases in prison camps run by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Those called FEMA camps. Okay? That's what's coming. This is all leading to that. See? It's all playing out, man. It's all playing out. All right? So people could dismiss it. You know, you could join into the fray and start doing all this protest and shit. Guess what? It's just a ruse. Once they bring in the troops, the true troops, they're going to overwhelm you. They're going to take over your cities. Right? There's going to be fear on American streets very soon. Dread. Okay? Bloodshed. Yeah, you people ain't seen nothing yet. All right? Let's read some more just so you know. They're getting ready. All right, let's get that real quick. Shit. Let's get this. All right, this is a book of Ezekiel, chapter 21. And verse 8, it says, Again, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, say, a sword is sharpened, and it also furbished. It is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contemneth the rod of my son as every tree. And he hath given it to be furbished, that it may be handled. This sword is sharpened, and it is furbished to give it into the hand of the slayer. Okay? So that's what we're seeing, man. Listen to this. Let's read some more of this. Listen to this. It says, the Trump administration seems to believe that they will be able to get the left to back down. With what? With what? With force. Okay? But instead, the violence just continues to increase. In 2025, there was a 1,300% increase in assaults against ICE officers and a 3,200% increase in vehicular attacks against ICE officers. Okay? So it says, damn, that's crazy. It says, it's going to get a lot worse. ICE is ramping up their wartime recruitment strategy so that they can conduct more operations in 2026, and the left hopes to mobilize millions of people to oppose them. So now you have it. Okay? You have it. One people standing up against another to fight with swords in their hands. Okay? It says an internal revolution is brewing. This is not going to end well, but most people already knew that. All right? So yeah, America, man, this is it, bro. This is, hey, Civil War 2.0, but this time it becomes the uncivil Civil War. All right, this time you're gonna be seeing the government and its agents against the American citizens and their agents. Okay, that both sides are all controlled by the same power. Okay, both sides are all funded. Both sides are all guided. Okay, pushed, formulated. All right, to bring about one goal, which is what? Martial law, and for them to what? Enact a state of police state, right? A permanent police state run by robots, AI, all right, and ultimately the microchip. Point blank, period. That's what's coming. Whether you like it or yes, that's what's coming. Okay? So get ready. Both sides gear up for war as an internal revolution begins to erupt in the United States. Okay? Let's get this last precept, and then we're going to close it out. All right. These are the days, man. Crazy, crazy, crazy. There's a book of 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 15. It says, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, right? All these ICE agents that are getting ready, right? And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands, weapons. For there shall be sedition among men. That's what you're seeing today, right now. All right. And invading one another, they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. That's a state of anarchy. All right. That's a state of without law. Okay. Chaos. All right. A state that could bring in martial law. Okay. Lawlessness. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. Okay. That's what this whole ICE thing, that was an example of that. All right, guy just gets up, bah, bah, right in your face, you out of there. And guess what? They say you got immunity. Shit. Right? But shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. All right, 2 Ezra 15, verse 15 to 19. All right. So anyway, I'm ended off there low and you're edified and informed. In closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakodash, the water Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and until next time, Shalom.